All right, we're live, back with another episode. But first, I want to thank the sponsors. Head over to www.johnbartoloshow.com and check out all the sponsors there. Special thanks to Gallotech. Special thanks to Rhino Metals, Galco Holsters, Inquest and Legendary Foods and Blackwater. Appreciate all of them. BLK Water. Appreciate everybody. We got a special guest today that needs no introduction. We may have some surprise guests along the way for this. I try to make this a special treat. We almost talked away the whole podcast in the frickin' car on the way here. But finally in studio, I got the one and only Jiujitsu.
What's going on, John?
What's happening? So we sprung him from the airport. He nearly stole someone else's bag. We got him here. He's kind of on the lam. We got him on the loose. But we were talking in the car and we were catching up and getting into all things jiu-jitsu, but I'm going to dive right in and start. And I just think that when they do these jiu-jitsu tournaments and they start to figure out how they're making money, they got to individualize it. They got to make them one-on-one matches. That's where it is. Not this team bullshit. Nobody cares. It's got to be one-on-one matches. We almost got into it in the car. It almost went to blows, but he's 9 feet tall and I'm not.
Yeah, so I disagree. I don't like the tag team formats, but I'm a huge fan of the quintet formats. So I think that there is room in the sport for that. But I also understand, ADCC will always be king's individual tournament. But I think there's room for both. And I think that some of the team tournaments is where you see some of the up-and-comers come up before they start blowing up on their own.
The things we fight about. I'm telling you. But I just think in that individual format is where you're going to find your stars, and you need stars to accelerate it to the next level. In basketball, when Jordan, Bird, Magic were on top of their game, basketball moved forward. Baseball, when you had in '98, when you had the home run chase, Griffey, all those guys in the mix. Baseball's a little different because it's controlled by like 5 cities. But when those 5 cities have a star, it means something. It elevates the whole game. New York works with Jeter. Boston works with David Ortiz. All those different things. St. Louis, when they have McGuire, Pujols. You need to have stars in those major cities. L.A. And it's the same thing in almost any other sport. Football, it's always great when you have Peyton and Brady going at it. You have to have those pockets of superstars. When you have those pockets of superstars, you're able to elevate the game. I think Gordon Ryan elevates the game, but he needs a few Robins to his Batman. You know what I mean? And I think if you had a tournament, right, and I said, picture this. This is the way I would kick it off. I got all the answers today. This is how I would kick it off. If Dana White did a tournament at Red Rock, and it had the top, say, 8, I don't know the number, 8 jiu-jitsu guys, the top 8 judo guys, the top 8 wrestlers, and the top 8 whatever, all guys with, maybe some MMA experience, but you don't want, top MMA guys. I'm going to go in that anyway. But just you had the top guys, and they got into this, and it was like a $200,000 prize. You would get all these motherfuckers to come out of the woodwork and compete in something like that.
Oh, absolutely.
And if you did it, you'd have to agree on the rule set. That I understand, and I'm not the expert on rule set. But you'd have to come up with the rule set. It'd have to be a submission-based rule set, which would be tough for the wrestlers, and it would be tough sometimes for some of the judo guys that the points just work differently. But if you got judo, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and maybe taekwondo, whatever you want to call it, but you come up with something, and you do a tournament. The money always draws them all in. The money is the key, because then you'll pull everybody out of the woodwork. But then along the way of doing that, you'll make so many stars because people are like, oh, did you see this? And you'll crown not only the best overall art, which we all think jiu-jitsu would win, but you'll also along the way crown the king of judo, the king of you know what I mean? So there's so many wins.
No, absolutely.
There's so many wins in a tournament like that. Just think about that. How fucking fire that would be.
ADCC has made a bunch of stars from guys that weren't well known when they entered the tournament. Craig Jones blew up overnight for a strong showing at ADCC. Nicky Rodriguez just, last year blew up overnight. It does. Lachlan Giles, same way, right? So,
but why? My format's the best one. I told you I got all the answers today. My format's the best one.
Right. And I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying that, these types of tournaments can turn somebody who's not well known into a superstar overnight. So it definitely, the money will bring out all the top guys.
Always.
And it will elevate somebody else in the tournament that maybe doesn't win it, but he has a nice, strong showing, makes a good run throughout.
Like I told some of the guys with the tactical games, I said, you want to make that thing a home run? Do a $25,000 prize. You'll get every motherfucker, every instructor that thinks there's somebody coming out of the woodwork to compete in that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And that's how you make it take to the next level. You know what I mean? And the thing is, like, everybody always says, like, oh, I don't know, how would we get that kind of money? If you go to, like, a SIG or a Smith & Wesson and you give them, like, top billing and everybody's running around in a SIG or Smith & Wesson costume or something, whatever. But they'll put the money up. I mean, they'll find a way because it's too lucrative, especially if you start drawing in big names.
Absolutely.
You know?
And the way things can be streamed now online, I mean, you're going to get the viewership there, which is going to draw the sponsors, and it's going to drive
Always.
It's going to drive the money to be able to pay the athletes that are.
Don't get into the gun industry and streaming, though. They haven't quite figured it out. It's still fucked up. They don't know that streaming is a thing and that it's like you've listened to enough of my podcast to understand my frustration with the gun industry and understanding new media. But it has more to do with left and right brain thinkers. So you're here. You're in Vegas.
First time.
Everybody thinks when you come to Vegas, everybody's walking the strip butt naked. Did I pick you up in clothes? Yes.
Some.
Clothing's optional. But it's funny because everybody does have that mindset, like people don't work. It's like there's no. So you'll see both sides of it because you are going to walk. You'll check out the strip, but you're going to have an awesome time here.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to it. From the amount of people I'm able to visit that live here, I'm really stoked about it.
Some good training in.
Yeah, get some training in. It's funny. I was telling my ex-wife, like, I'm coming down here just to visit people. I may go to the strip just to see it at night because I've never been here and see it lit up, but it's mainly just spend time with friends.
We always got to justify our causes, but yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. And there's a couple things going on in the world. Obviously, we should talk about. We should discuss. You're out there. Obviously, your name is Jiu-Jitsu Cop. How do you feel about everything going on? Scary time.
I've been a cop for 15 years, and this is probably
scary.
The worst I've seen it in my area. I work in Metro Atlanta. I started my career off with the Atlanta Police Department back in 2005. There's been a bunch of really bad incidents, a lot of black eyes for law enforcement over the past 15 years, and right now it's probably the hardest time it's been to be a cop, in my opinion.
You think, and I'm asking broad question. You think it's gonna push people away from the job, everything that's going on?
Absolutely. We already saw that after Ferguson. We started getting a lot fewer applications. There's some other things that go into it too, but we're not seeing nearly the amount of applicants, and certainly not the amount of qualified applicants that make it through the screening process to actually get hired on the job. And I think that the longer this goes on, the worse it's going to get in that regards as well.
It's scary. And just the other day, I know you can talk about this. The cops drinking bleach in New York.
Oh, that was crazy.
That was fucking crazy.
It's always been one of those things that you just kind of stay away from certain restaurants because you're afraid they might spit in your food or put something in it. But, these guys are out there. It's my understanding they're out there working protest, and they go to a nearby place just to grab something for a break.
It was like a Steak and Shake. It was like a chain.
Shake Shack.
Shake Shack.
Yeah.
Steak and Shake. I like Steak and Shake.
I love Steak and Shake. Yeah, they just stopped by a Shake Shack, got something, and realized, pretty early on into the drink that, hey, man, there's bleach in it.
You think?
Or they thought it was bleach in it.
Probably smell it.
Yeah, and that's crazy. So now you got to be extra careful. Fortunately, I live in the land of Chick-fil-A where you get some grilled Jesus, and I never have to worry about my food. Service is always great.
Yeah, it's scary. It's so scary. It's just so we laugh, but you laugh because you don't want to cry. It's so scary right now. It's like it's so uncertain in terms of the career path, the people. I haven't seen anything like this ever in my lifetime. Like you mentioned Ferguson, it's worse. It's just I just don't know how this will all shake out and how. We're not experts, neither one of us. Who knows how it plays out, right?
Yeah, I certainly think how the general election goes in November will shape how things shake out next year. In the direction of law enforcement. But there's no telling. It's like the Wild West right now as far as things changing every day, and you're not quite sure what's going to happen. Never in my lifetime would I think that a city would have an autonomous zone in the United States. And
that's crazy. We got to talk about that. They needed Gatorade and cigarettes or something.
Oh man, they had like a whole list of stuff that they needed to get imported in there.
Is that funny?
Yeah, and their list of demands.
I think they should give them the 9 blocks or whatever it is that they have. I think they should just give it to them.
It's a crazy-ass social experiment, I tell you that, because people who would push for this, now they're going to see it play out in real time. And then, it's either going to confirm what they thought or it's going to be like,
do you think they should shut them off, though, and not give them Gatorade, cigarettes, and
No, you can't shut them off. I mean, I don't think they should have
They make
stayed away in the
demands.
first place.
They
but-
make demands.
Yeah. I mean, they're not going to give in to the demands, but as far as, they're not going to cut off U.S. citizens within the U.S. territories and do that. But it's crazy. I'm from the South, so to me, all that up there on the Northwest corridor is like it's like
China.
a whole foreign land.
So I have a way to fix it because I got all the answers today. Simple. I think everybody who's been arrested through this should have to go and clean and restore the businesses.
Hey, your community service, as part of it. No jail time, no probation, no fines.
Nothing.
Just go clean.
You'll have zero record. You just have to grab a mop and clean and rebuild the businesses.
Absolutely.
I think that's the solution. I mean, to me, that's what I think would be the quick fix, and everybody just kind of goes their separate ways. But I said it the other day. I had a few guys in here. I said, everybody just has to get back to work. Everyone has to get back to work. That's just what it is. I mean, people are just idle hands do the devil's work. I believe that 110%.
So I talk about this at work with some other guys, and this whole COVID-19 thing was a huge reason. It created the powder keg that just blew up in the United States. You had people that were cooped up in their houses for months on end, depending on what part of the country were. It was a little bit longer than others. And then all of a sudden, they had a reason to go out. And then it just
Burn
became
shit.
mob mentality.
Free TVs.
I think, and I'm on a team that deals
Don't
with...
bang the table anymore. See? It's fragile. Everybody shits on me for the table. Go ahead.
At work, one of my assignments is I'm on a team that deals with protests when they start getting violent and everything. And most of the protests I've seen have been people really just trying to get their message across. And it's been pretty peaceful. Obviously in certain cities it's turned the wrong direction. It became violent, destructive, things like that. But most people are out there protesting. They're just really trying to get their voice to be heard, and they're trying to go out there and stand up for what they believe in. And I'm all about that. It's just when it turns violent and destructive and chaos.
There's no question everybody condemns what happened. That's not even up for debate. Everybody condemns it. And you'd have to live on Pluto to not condemn it. Everybody agrees with that. We're all on the same page. I know you do. I know everybody does. But to throw the baby out with the bathwater is never the answer.
No.
And whether it's defunding or whatever they want to call it, all these different avenues of monetary fix, I guess you'd call it, or financial fix is what I'm looking for. I think that only, cops need more training.
Absolutely.
They need more understanding of the situations. Can I see it from all sides of the street? Sure. And I know you can too. I think, the mentality of people don't understand the mindset. So I'll give you my interpretation, you give me yours. I think people need to understand that a lot of law enforcement officers are dealing with the situation in the moment.
Right.
And not enough people are taking a second to take a step back and look at the moment. Like the situation in the drive-thru. Like a lot of people are not looking at the moment. Like, guy gets his taser stripped from him. Guy could be incapacitated by that taser. He's scared for his life at that point. You know what I mean? He's worried about 150 different things. You have to first step into that moment. And people don't understand that in that moment, when you're afraid for your life, why has your life suddenly become worth less?
Yeah, so the whole thing with the taser is pretty tricky, right? Because the taser is generally a less lethal weapon. There have been people who've died due to a taser, right? So we have to take a lot of training. I got to recertify every year on my taser. And, there's certain target areas that we have to aim for. There's certain things we have to stay away from. Like, you don't want to shoot somebody in the eye, the face. We got to be careful about not getting one of the taser probes too close to the heart. We got to make sure we don't subject them to numerous repeated exposures, stuff like that, because that can increase the likelihood of death. Not to mention underlying medical causes and things like that. So they're a great tool for law enforcement, but we have to be careful, even as police officers, when we use that. We got to be judicious with it. We can't just tase people for whatever reason, right? There's things we got to consider. So while the general public tends to view that as a less lethal option, and generally it is, it's when it's used right. If I get shot in the face and I fall back and crack my head, I could die from that. Something else to think about in that situation is the suspect had already stolen something from the officer's gun belt. Well, if he incapacitates him, if he incapacitates the officer, that gives him a chance to strip the officer from his gun, and then who knows what happens after that. Mm-hmm. So it's a fluid situation. A lot of things to think about.
The deeper question I get to is, why is somebody's life worth less?
I don't have the answer.
I'm getting philosophical. I'm getting deep. No one has the answer, It's one of those things that I think we'll look for that answer for a long time. But we've determined in society today that right now, a cop's life's worth less.
I think it's really always been that way in law enforcement and military work. Whenever an officer or a service member dies, it's always tragic, and you hear the public give their thanks and things like that. But in the moment, it's one of those things where they just expect you to be able to do it, right? You look at an active shooter. I am certainly expected, and I am more than willing to run into an active shooter situation and give my life up to save women, men, children, whatever.
Innocents.
That's innocent people. That is my job. I'm more than happy to lay my life down for that, right? But when people expect that, and they should in certain situations, then all of a sudden it just devalues it, even on regular calls. Answering domestic violence calls, answering, just doing traffic stops.
Yeah, I mean, I struggle back and forth with that because it's a deeper thing. It goes deeper than even police work, like you said. It goes back to military, everything else. In a way, it's what you sign up for, right? Everybody, cashes the check for up to and beyond their life, that's what they sign up for, and you know that when you go in, and that's part of the I guess the romance of it, right? And it's just troubling to me that whether it's CNN or any news outlet, and you don't have to comment on this, any news outlet, they've devalued the life of someone to a point where it's almost like, you feel like, I don't ever want a cop to go out there and feel less than. You know what I mean? And they shouldn't. They have families, they have lives, they have people that love them, and to go out and do a job that most people don't want to do, that's a thankless job in so many ways. A lot like coaching, any civil service is, anything in the civil service is that way. They're very thankless gigs. I coached football for years, I get it. You don't do it for the paycheck, and certainly don't do it for the paycheck, but it's scary to me. I just want to say that you guys go out there and your life becomes almost devalued. You don't have to say. I mean, I'm telling you. It's scary to me.
But it's a fickle thing, right? Just a couple months ago, the NYPD men and women were hailed as heroes during the whole COVID quarantine. Going out there, putting their life on the line to protect everybody, being exposed to the virus and things like that. And then just a couple months later, then they're being spit at, cussed at. Everything, right? After 9/11, going back to NYPD, they were all hailed as heroes, and it wasn't too much longer after that just went back to normal where, okay, people are going and just pissing on the cops.
Do you find it funny that COVID's like not a thing? Not as much?
I have no comment on the COVID.
Yeah, we'll keep it that way. We could go down a rabbit hole on that anyway for 2 hours. But yeah, the COVID thing is interesting to me because it suddenly got quiet on that front, and now everybody's going to try to jump back in on that. But we'll see how the thing plays out in Seattle. It's going to be a lot of fun, I think, watching that progression. And I think they should do it as a social experiment. I think they should give it to them, but I think at some point they should shut the spigot off. And they should say, now you're on your own. Now form your own utopian society, and let's see where it goes. But whether or not they're going to annex, 9 square blocks in Seattle will be another story.
Now, I do think the funny thing about that is the first thing they did was set up barricades and have armed patrols by the citizens. I mean, it's pretty much everything they had talked about not wanting in America, borders, and they wanted gun control. And
they built a wall.
They go up, set up barricades to keep people out, and then have armed patrols from their own citizenry. So I just find it ironic on that front.
Oh, it's comical, and it'll play out. And we have actually a special guest today, a special guest joining the show. You don't have to whisper. You don't have to whisper. I knew that this moment would come. We got Coach Casey.
What's up, everybody?
So listen, I delivered him here from the airport. He tried to steal someone else's bag right out the gate, accidentally.
You can't say try and accidentally in the same sentence.
So I said this, Coach, and I want to get your opinion because I want to come back to the jiu-jitsu. I said Dana White needs to set this up at Red Rock, where we have 4 brackets. Forget about this team shit. No more teams. And we have a judo bracket, a jiu-jitsu bracket, a wrestling bracket, and maybe call it taekwondo, whatever you want to call it. Sambo. And then they all fight for a $200,000 purse. So you not only crown the 4 best in each bracket, but you also crown an overall champion.
one person will compete in all 4 styles.
No. Like you have a jiu-jitsu bracket that's all, like say the 8 best jiu-jitsu players around. 8 best judo, 8 best wrestlers, 8 best, but you put up that type of cash prize, motherfuckers will be coming out of the woodwork for that.
Absolutely.
Don't you think that's a good idea?
I think it's cool.
I think it's fucking amazing. I think I cured cancer right here. I think that's amazing.
Now, I think that would be an amazing event. It would draw a lot of viewers. It would draw a lot of athletes.
He was hating. No, you were hating.
No. What I said was I'm not shitting on the team format because I think the quintets are amazing to watch. I also appreciate the individual tournaments, but I think the quintets are great. I'm just not big on the tag team.
I can see that.
All right. Well, listen, I thought of something amazing.
You did, and especially if you hold it once every 4 years and make it like the Olympics.
Oh, the kumite. It's like the kumite.
I think it'd be cooler if you have like 8 people, and then they had to compete in all 4 of the rule sets.
Yeah, the rule set will be the tough thing to decide.
No, but like one person enter, like an 8-person bracket, and they have to compete in all of the rule sets, and then you take the combined placing, and then have like an ultimate winner.
Yeah, like the winner of the judo bracket gets X amount of points, and then they all compete in wrestling. Then you'd have to figure out what style of wrestling. All compete in submission grappling, right? Probably a jiu-jitsu rule set and a sambo, since you got that in there.
And sambo would be good. That'd be a crazy bracket, though.
Yeah, just imagine getting 8 dudes, and then you run 4 tournaments in the same day. That'd be sick.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have like the ultimate champ.
What would the cash prize have to be, though, to pull people in? I said $200,000, and you get a lot of hitters to come out.
For sure. I think if you did show money too, if you said like $5,000 a show and 20 to win, I think you could get some awesome people.
So 5 to show, 20 to win each fight.
No, like
just for the tournament.
Like we'll bring you out. We'll give you a hotel in Vegas for the weekend. You'll get $5,000 just to show up, regardless of winning or losing. And then the winner takes 20. You would get anybody you wanted for that.
I think you got to put more than 20 out there, though.
It'd be rad, but you asked me what would it take.
Yeah.
20 is what it would take.
I like the idea of, actually, you got me just spinning for a second. I like the idea of doing 20 for every win you get. But that would take a fucking insane amount of prize money, right? So maybe you did like 10 for every win you get.
If you did 25, if you're running 4 different rule sets and this 25, the winner could potentially take home $100,000.
Yeah.
That's just, it's kind of like the EBI where you get more money for each submission, only it's a little bit more money.
I think we're on to something, seriously.
But then there are people that just will never do that. Like a lot of the IBJJF guys will never compete in those kind of rule sets just because...
Because it's gimmicky?
Well, not because it's gimmicky. It just... Like, we can't get a lot of guys to go into EBI either. They don't want to do it just because...
They're points players.
Yeah, they're points players, and they don't want to get tapped, and they don't want to... they would rather win by an advantage point than try to figure out who's got the best finishing.
Yeah, I think if you're making everybody compete in 4 different rule sets, you're going to take out guys like Gordon Ryan, who spends so much time with his freestyle wrestling as well as his jiu-jitsu that he's not going to want to deviate from his training, especially with ADCCs, to go and study judo to be able to win a judo or a sambo bracket.
See, I actually think Gordon would do it.
I think you would too.
I really do.
I think the money would be the kicker for him, though. I think if you put the right money up, because
if it was $100,000, he would do it.
100 heartbeat.
But guys like Keenan and those kind of guys would never. They would never touch it.
No, primarily the guys that train in the gi, they probably wouldn't touch it. I mean, maybe from the judo aspect of it, because it still requires a gi, but
I think it'd be such a badass tournament.
It would, but you're asking about, getting the top people.
Because I think you win 2 ways if you do it my way, because I'm being selfish and I know everything today. You crown the best judo player, you crown the best wrestler, say freestyle, you crown the best sambo guy, and the best jiu-jitsu guy. So you get 4 wins. And then in the end, you have a final rule set that you all agree on. And that's the rule set they fight under. And the grand prize, it's like over the top with Stallone. Like the grand prize is like, you do like a 2-person, a 2-loss elimination, something. I just think there's so much there. I think it'd be so fucking badass.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you adopt the ADCC rules for the absolute bracket where, that's the winner of all the brackets go into that. Because that's something all the top grapplers train in anyway. I think you're onto something for sure.
There's an organization in Orange County, California called IFS, and they they used to, now they just do Muay Thai shows, but back in the day, they were doing MMA, and then they had a hybrid show where the first round was Muay Thai rules, the second round was boxing only, and then the third round was MMA. So in the last round, you'd have to change your gloves in the corner. So you'd rip off like the 8-ounce gloves and put on the 4-ounce gloves, and it was rad. It was really cool.
Yeah. I just try to keep it, like, I'm trying to think of a way that obviously you could integrate with the UFC, right? So the UFC would get this push out of it, right? Because obviously Dana's got to create a fucking boatload of content, right? So he gets a boatload of content by doing this tournament, and I like the idea of every 4 years because it's like now it has like a Kumite feel to it. Like every 4 years, it's mystic. Now there's dragons and like it's fucking
but it's going to be televised, so nobody can make up their own records.
Exactly, and you do it in a way that it's like you're crown. I like the idea of crowning those 4 superior ones, and then it's like boom, you have like you have what the UFC originally was intended, right? Like to find out what the best discipline is.
Or why don't you do, like, it could be freestyle, Greco, folk style. It could be IBJJF rules. It could be no-gi, regular, like 80cc rules. It could be EDI rules. It could be sambo rules. It could be, and you're going to have like maybe 10 different styles of grappling, and you're going to spin a wheel and just pick 4, like right during the day.
Not a wheel. It's got to be like a torch that spins like a flaming torch.
You know what that reminds me of? You ever seen the movie Red Belt?
Yeah, all that.
You spin the wheel and find out what your disadvantage is going to be going into the fight.
I think we're onto something here, though.
That movie was terrible.
I definitely think we're onto something, though.
No, you're definitely onto something. You just got to pitch it.
It's the money. The money's the thing, though. I agree. The money is the key because that's how you draw.
Well, I'm going to pull something right out of Eddie Bravo's mouth. You know, you go to the Worlds, the IBJJF Worlds, and all you see is teammates and girlfriends. There's 0 spectators there that are there just to watch. You're there to support Octos or wherever you're from. And then you see a bunch of girlfriends and boyfriends that are supporting the athletes. But there's 0 fans at those events.
Right.
So the big problem is the rules and the style has to be friendly to spectators, or why do it? When you start putting up $100,000 or more, how are you going to sell that to anybody? Like, who's going to put up that kind of money? Where's the return, the ROI on that?
Obviously in the streaming, right?
Yeah, but who's really watching it?
A tournament like that, I think a lot of people would watch.
And I think if Dana's doing it, people, just casual UFC fans will tune into it with nothing else going on. I think you'll have some of the streams there.
The key would be Gordon, because Gordon would draw. I think he'd be the key for one of the brackets. And you have to get the best of the best. I don't know who the best judo players, you know what I mean? You have to get the best. If you have, see, like, it's like this, right? And I'll throw this at you. It's like the tactical games, right? Do the tactical games mean anything unless Tony does it? This, you know what I mean? You have to get the best of the best.
Yeah, nobody's going to pay attention unless they know somebody or they've heard of somebody.
You have to get the best of the best. You have to get the best of the best in. That's the key.
I mean, even look at the pro sports, you know, the 4 major ones, right?
Yeah.
You know, if it's Tampa Bay versus, you know, some small team from the NL, like nobody's really watching.
The Super Bowl's always better with Brady in it.
True.
Fact.
It's true.
You have to get the best of the best in. And that's the money draws that. The money brings that in.
Where did he end up going?
Tampa.
You think they're going to be good?
I think they will because their receiving core is too good. I think they'll win the division. Whether or not they'll go beyond that, I think they win that division.
Who's the front runner?
In that division?
Just
Saints.
in general.
They are right now, I think.
No,
I think
Saints are front runner.
No, you know Vegas odds. They're going to give Brady a nod by a sliver. It'll be like he'll be like a minus 100 or something. You know what I mean? Like it'll be a sliver. Look it up now. Watch. What division is that? Vegas odds
NFC South
on NFC South. I'll tell you right now. Odds to win the NFC South according to Odds Shark. Let's see. Saints are still slightly favored, but they're saying Buccaneers. It's a minus 100. It's almost a pick'em. So it's the other way, but it's almost a pick'em. Minus 100's a pick'em. You know numbers. Don't let me get into it.
I know numbers. I'm just saying I don't think that.
You made it sound like they were going to be eyes in it, like the Saints got it in a walk.
Watch as it gets closer to the season. especially when
Let's
the regular
say
season
let's
starts.
say they split it. My money, if they split it, the series, it goes 1-1. My money's on the Buccaneers because I'll bet you they have a softer schedule.
Yeah, well, they're going to have a softer schedule because they did worse last year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the NFL injuries come into play. All it takes is one injury for either team. That's going to
Yeah, but that's anybody.
Also, the crazy thing about the NFL is it's one and done in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So it literally comes down to what? Game management, quarterbacking, and you got to say like if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers get a good seeding.
Yeah, and Brady's the best game manager that's ever walked the planet. There's no question. He's not the best thrower of a football, but he's the best game manager that's ever walked the planet.
I would always bet on Brady against any quarterback.
No, I'll buy that.
Yeah.
And that's what sucks about football. They like at least in basketball, out of a 7-game series, you know who's the best team. If there's no flukes, you're not going to win 4 games in a row.
Yeah. I would say the only time the Patriots, like if you're picking on Brady for a second, I would say the only time that like in a best of 7, I'm not sure, like their like 1980 Olympic team moment, like the only time would probably be against the Rams in 01. Like if they play that game 10 times, they probably lose 9. You know what I mean?
Was that Kurt Warner?
That was the Kurt Warner. That was the Greatest Show on Turf team. That was like one of the best managements next to the Atlanta series, Atlanta Super Bowl, which I know hits home for you, but it's true because Atlanta won that game. The Patriots just beat them.
If they run the ball on 3rd down, they win the game.
If they run the ball at any point in the fucking 4th quarter, they win the game. You're being too kind now. If they run the ball at any point, that was just terrible game management. You know it. It was just terrible game management. The throws they made, like that big throw they made in the game, it's like, what the fuck? Like, just run the ball. Just run the ball. Like, it's over if you keep running the ball and killing clock. They gave him too much time. And you give Brady time and you give him opportunity, he'll kill you every time.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a
why
given.
they're hard to pick against.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the Patriots lineup over the years, they always got a guy that was 2 years past his prime.
Yeah.
At every position.
So the NFL is going to get back to work, which we know. Basketball, hockey, baseball still can't figure it out. UFC's getting back to work, obviously.
We've been back to
Yeah.
They never stop.
I haven't slept in 3 weeks.
Now, does it bother you that baseball can't get back to work? Are they rich bitches or what's happening?
It bothers me because it's costing money me in my pocket working for the Braves games, but it definitely doesn't look good when you got a lot of the country that's out of work, been out of work, and you got guys haggling over. And I don't blame the players in this. I'm just saying in general, you got people bickering over a lot of money, especially when Major League Baseball just $10 billion deal with Turner. Like that's where you're starting to lose fans, and it's going to be worse than after the strike as far as fans return back to baseball if they don't play this year.
Oh boy, baseball's on strike. I didn't even know that.
See?
They're not necessarily on strike. They can't agree to terms to get the season started.
He can't get his head out of the weeds because he's got 95 guys on the card every week.
So with baseball, it's the players that can't figure it out, or it's the teams.
So they came to an agreement
they
in the
can't.
preseason about what would happen if they restarted, because they started spring training right before the regular season started. That shut down due to COVID, and the agreement at the time was assuming fans were going to be able to come back into the stadiums. Well, the fans aren't coming back to the stadiums for Major League Baseball this year, right? It's just not going to happen. And so the owners are trying to come up with different proposals. So
they lose the concessions.
They're losing 40% of the revenue on game day.
Yeah.
So they want to cut salaries by 40%.
Oh, no, actually, well, it depends. There's a bunch of proposals out there, but yeah, they're haggling over how much money the players are going to get. The players want 100% of their prorated salary, which is, if we're playing 75 games, I want to get paid my normal rate for each game I play. Major League Baseball is saying, no, we need to cut that back because we're losing 40% of revenue on game. And so, that on top of some players being worried about exposing their families to the virus if they contract it, go home, things like that. It's a logistical nightmare that every other sport's been able to figure out except for Major League Baseball.
Well, I bet you that being afraid of getting COVID is not real with most of them. I bet you they're still hanging out during the day and going to the beach and going to the pools. It's probably just a bargaining chip. But I'll tell you this, baseball's dying anyway. Like, no one's really watching that shit. Ever since they started steroid testing everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to look at the numbers, but I think you're right.
You heard it here first from Coach Casey. Breaking news. Baseball's dead.
No, it's not dead, but these things don't help. For
Yeah.
sure.
No.
They'll die. Baseball will die if they do not play at all this year.
Yeah, it'll be go back to pre-98, 94.
You know, people are watching sports they never watched before just because it happens to be back on TV.
Yeah. Baseball has a lot of problems. It's like hockey.
Not only that, but once Vin Scully quit, once he was gone, I quit listening. I grew up listening to him as the Dodgers, announcer, and it's like all those fans, they're all gone now because the game's changed and it's so slow, and the young guys can't even understand it. The kids aren't going to sit and watch a 4-hour baseball game.
Well, baseball's done a good job trying to, promote pace of play. They're making rules changes to stop some of these pitching changes, after every batter, things like that. They're trying to engage with the younger fan base and bring those guys back. But this doesn't help for sure.
So we were talking earlier too about the social experiment in Seattle.
Oh,
So Coach Casey is now a prepper.
I'm about to show my ass right now.
Yeah. So I think we could send him in to infiltrate the camp. They're asking for Gatorade and cigarettes. Where do you stand on this?
Oh, boy.
The social experiment.
Well, I mean, I try not to polarize my audience.
No.
Because
I find it funny. I think they should give him the land.
I run a gym, right? And I have conservatives and Democrats and everybody in between. I would just pose this question to the entire world. Why do people feel like they deserve something that they didn't work for? It's that simple.
Dun,
And,
dun, dun.
it's like if you can make a compelling argument that you should get something that you didn't earn, I'll agree with you. But it's really hard. A man that came from nothing and built himself up, it's really hard to understand that. I just can't relate to it.
I had the solution today. I said everybody that gets arrested from the thing, they should make them do the community service and restore the businesses.
Well, I mean, the primal part of me is you could smoke a cigarette in my living room if you want to. But if I kick your ass because you did it, you can't get mad about it. So if you want to riot and picket and cause hell and create a ruckus, that's fine. That's your prerogative. But when you get wrapped up, don't complain. Just take time and go to jail and get out and start over.
Well, you also have a unique perspective because you're a small business owner. And
That's why I asked him.
COVID, I'm sure, did a bad job of shutting your business down and everything else. So that's a lot of revenue. And like you said, you spend a lot of time building yourself up. You have kids to take care of. You have people you care about that come to the gym. And for most people that do jiu-jitsu, there's this huge mental health component in being able to go to the gym, work out your frustrations.
The routine.
Yeah, I'm not a very social guy, but the gym is where I get most of my, social activity. Right? I see friends all the time, stuff like that, and it shut me down. It hurts mentally, it hurts monetarily, and it just crushes you.
Yeah, I was just talking to a couple of my students, and one of them had a really right-wing perspective on all this, right? And I was just kind of saying to him, I was like, just imagine, I've got a wife and kids and a really great support network. I've spent many years just putting the right people around me. And could you imagine if you were alone and you just had an apartment during this last 3-4 months and you were just all alone?
That's why suicide spiked.
Man,
Mm-hmm.
Factually, suicides, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I can tell you they spiked, and we worked a lot of them this spring.
They've been hiding them.
I couldn't even imagine what some of these poor kids are going through.
The thing is, the mental health component in this is everybody's in uncharted territory. There's no baseline for this. So there's no understanding of you do X, you do Y, Z happens. There's none of that. That's all out the window. So you have 30% of the population that's out of work that probably won't get back to work anytime soon, probably at least not through the year, similar to the organizations and things we're talking about. You have small businesses that'll never come back. Never come back. I'll go a step further. Imagine the guy alone or the gal alone that built a small business from blood, sweat, and tears, right? A patron-based business that they require the person to come in, like jiu-jitsu, like anything. And they don't have any other streams of income. None. No online, nothing. And their business gets a Molotov cocktail thrown through it. And they don't have the support structure to rebuild.
Well, think about put it like this. So when COVID hit, it the first thing, okay, we lost all our money. The second thing is, I love my employees. How can I continue to pay them?
Right.
The third thing is like, what do we stop paying?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we stop paying cable. We stop paying rent. We stop paying insurance. We stop paying that kind of stuff. And then now a Molotov cocktail comes in and burns our inventory up. And now we have no money coming from the insurance companies. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy times. Because for me, it was all human element first. First thing,
Of course.
I'm like, oh shit, I'm losing my business. Human element.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Who do I love? How can I take care of them? I'm glad to say I paid every employee the whole entire time. Not one person didn't get paid during this whole thing. And I don't think, I hope most people were able to do that. But the other thing is, like, whatever corporations you're paying for, big corporations, insurance companies and that, those are the ones that you just stop paying. And you know damn well these buildings that are getting burned up, they're probably in the same spot. Like, I don't know if Chai from 10th Planet Long Beach has insurance or not, but I would imagine that he just stopped paying everything just to try to make sure he can rebound and
Sure.
have business again.
Or even if you had insurance, most policies for business don't cover, your rioting, your looting, things like that. So you lost, even if you paid your insurance and it was active, you lost it anyway.
Yeah, so then who's responsible? I would say it's the mayor and the governor's responsibility, because especially in Seattle, they ain't doing shit over there. They're just like, hey, no one can do anything.
Freedom.
I don't know. It's crazy times for sure.
And for one country, you got so many different responses. You got 50 different states, 50 different responses from the governors, and then you got local jurisdictions that have their own rules on top of it. And it's, coming from Georgia, we were one of the first to open back up. I'm out in Vegas, and I have no idea what's going on. I think you guys just reopened a little bit, and I'm still seeing a lot of places that are, dead, like the airport. I couldn't believe how dead the airport was when I flew into it.
Nobody knows what's
And
going on.
Jiu-Jitsu is in the worst spot because it's a very contact-based.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to get around it. A lot of schools did their Zoom classes. They came back to social distancing, fitness classes, and stuff like that. And they're trying to provide any product they can to keep their consumers. But there's really no way to get good or stay good at jiu-jitsu without the mat time and actually physically touching another person.
Mm.
We had a lot of splinter cells open up. Thank God that a lot of my students just matted the garages and they went covert. But, I think especially in our state, our governor is pretty damn quiet. And he purposely doesn't give a lot of information out. He just yesterday said we're not ready to go into phase 3. But, New York, he over-communicates. California over-communicates. But Nevada, it's just like businesses. I was down on the strip the other night, and there was 30,000 people on Fremont Street underneath the lights, and I was like, what the hell? Like, this is insane.
Yeah, and I really don't like the phrase, essential workers or essential industries, employees, whatever you want to call it, because if you got a family, any job that puts money in your family's pocket is essential.
You want to laugh? Before all this went down, tell him, Coach, what I said to you. We were talking about investments when we were talking about things to buy.
Bullets.
I looked him right in the eye and I go, buy all the bullets and guns you can.
This was before COVID was even a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, yeah.
He's like, yeah, fuck you, jiu-jitsu wins.
No,
I like saying that, though. My version's better.
Man, you'll see that in every presidential election right before.
I'm like,
all the guns and ammo.
I'm like, Coach, trust me. Now you can't get a Glock. You can't buy a fucking round.
No, everything's, it's shut out.
Yeah.
Remember in the height for like a 100 box of 9 was like $89.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It was crazy. It was crazy.
I believe it. I mean, I'm in the South, and people love guns in the South, so people have been gobbling them up anyway. But it's record amounts of applications for weapons permits and everything.
Yeah, it's $1 million over. So the NICS checks were $1 million over each month of what the previous year was. So you have right around probably 2.5 to 3 million probably new gun owners. That's why you won't see that be an issue in the election. I don't think. You'd be an idiot in November.
How about this? How would Gavin Newsom manage California if there was 0 guns in California?
So that's the flaw, right? And I don't want to get too deep into politics or political science. That's the flaw in what we call neoliberal thinking, right? So let me flip the question to you. I read an article the other night. It's really interesting. So think about this in the context of the Supreme Court and everything. You have the First Amendment, right, which is freedom of speech. You have the Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms. Imagine if the First Amendment, they started coming out with laws that said, you can't really talk about this, and you can't really talk about that. Kind of like in the Second Amendment when they say, you can't put a switch here, and you can't put a button there, and you can't do this. Just imagine that world for a second, where they started to say, geez, we really don't want you to talk about politics. We're going to censor this. We're going to censor that. Just imagine that erosion, right? And imagine a world where you don't have the ability to say or do what you want. Or imagine a bill or a law attempting to be passed that didn't allow you to say what you wanted. If you put yourself in that mindset for a second, that's the main fundamental flaw with neoliberal thinking. It's secular by nature. They want to piecemeal certain things. Well, this doesn't really mean this, but that's a literal. This doesn't really mean this, but no, that's literal. This doesn't mean this, but that's literal. When you start to carve out these little things, now I'll be the first to say, I'm a classic. I'll say it right on air. I'm a classic Republican in the sense that I believe in small government. What Trump's doing right now is classic small government. Manage it at the local levels. All government's local. I believe in all freedoms. So I think they should be read in the literal context. If you have the right to bear arms, you should have the right to bear arms. Do I agree and believe that, yes, we shouldn't be able to own a nuclear bomb? Okay, so I'll draw the line there. But I think when you start to erode or you start to pick at certain things in the Constitution, because I read the Constitution as literal, okay? When you start to pick at those things, it becomes secular. And it becomes, well, I think this about that, and I think that about this. Now, I agree. The First Amendment's gotten out of control. Doesn't pay to be right, pays to be first.
Absolutely.
It doesn't pay to be right, pays to be first. And that's why I've been a huge advocate, and you've heard me say this, Coach, about, and as far as social media goes, I think you should use your own name. I think every account should be verified. I think everybody should be verified on social media. You should know exactly who's talking to you. You shouldn't be able to hide behind Joe Shit the Ragman as a name. And I'm going to be able to say, Coach Casey, I heard he sucks dicks. You just shouldn't be able to, there should be a consequence, because I believe in schoolyard rules, too. Say something stupid, you might get punched in the face.
If you want to make society a lot more polite, bring back bullying.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is like when you make I agree 100%. Like, I think trolls should be held accountable. I think, you need to be held accountable for your actions, right? But so now we say, like, nobody with an egghead on Twitter. You have to be like. So, but who's the person that's going to manage that?
Right.
And then that's government.
Agreed.
So it's kind of like, what comes first, the hen or the egg?
Yeah.
But what we can do is say simple assault is no longer like an offense that you're going to get arrested for. For example, if I'm in a liquor store, restaurant, gas station, freeway, and someone flips me off and starts talking shit to me, and I just follow them to their house and slap them when they get out of their car, the police should roll up and be like, what happened? Be like, he's berating me, threatening me, I slapped him. Mm-hmm. I didn't fall him to the ground, I didn't pound his head in, I just taught him a lesson. If cops would be like, cool, see it? I think everybody would be real nice. Like, if you were in a bar pushing people around and someone just cracked you, it should be no harm, no foul.
You wouldn't push anyone around again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that's politics is a funny thing, and when you start to chip away at certain things and you don't allow them to stand on their own, because that's the thing that the Supreme Court will look at. Like, well, if we started passing laws that erode the First Amendment or the Fourth Amendment or any of those, and you start to chip away or scratch at those laws, why should the Second be treated differently? Because I'm going to make a point. Because literally the First Amendment has got to the point where it doesn't pay to be right. You have to be right when you shoot someone. You know that better than anybody. You have to be right. You don't have to be right. I could go on under a fake account right now, sitting here with you, and I could say, I saw Coach Casey screwing some guy in the bathroom. I don't have to be right. I can just say it. That could ruin his business, his life, his home.
Well, that's why, I mean, I think you can't put things to manage that in place. I think you need to take away things that protect people that hide behind those laws that protect them. You know, it's just kind of like for me, my kids, they get no quarter in my house. It's like, you have responsibilities, you didn't do them, you get punished. It's very simple. And if you do everything that you're supposed to do, you get whatever you want. It's really easy. It's based on merit, everything. And so, like, if you say we have to manage this, so we're going to do that, that's adding more government. That's bad. But if you said, like, hey, you want to act like a knucklehead, and someone wants to just kind of slap you around a little bit, like, what's the reason he slapped you? You know, I kind of like the no retreat state. I love that. Like, I'm here, you're messing with me, I'm going to defend myself here. You know, you just can't, I mean, that's a slippery slope, right? Because you go to the ground with them and you start elbowing them when they're already on the ground. Now you're assaulting them. And I agree. But I definitely think you should be able to grab a grown man by his collar and slap the shit out of him. And I think if people did that, everybody would be much, much more polite in public.
Yeah, I think we've gotten to a place, and you see it a little bit in law enforcement because you're familiar with it. You know, somebody's got to go, right? In a domestic, somebody has to go. And this gets down a slippery slope. I don't necessarily see it comes back to that somebody has to be first, right? They set a precedent. Now, I just think that we're screwed because we're all men, right? So men are instantly the villain. They're instantly the enemy in all things that we do, everything that we do all day. You're doubly guilty if you breathe funny. You're guilty if you look at somebody funny. You're guilty if you slap someone around. You're extra guilty if you're white and you do it, right? Because that's the privilege, right? So you can't win. You can't win in any scenario. So we created our own worst enemy, and COVID proliferated that, right? COVID accentuated that because everybody's locked in their house, everybody's in their own head, everybody's going cuckoo, everybody's like, what's next? You know what I mean? And now people are slowly going like, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. Everybody's trying to protect what's theirs, and everybody's scared. And the minute the first chance they get to burn it all down, they take advantage of it. So I just look at it like, at the end of the day, people have to get back to work. Idle hands do the devil's work. People have to get back to work. People have to stay focused on what's important to them, put their blinders on, worry about what they're trying to do, and not worry so much about what the next guy's doing, what the other guy's doing, how they can get a free sandwich, how they can get free Gatorade and cigarettes. It's you live in a great country and a great society where if you work hard, you can build something. You have, I have, you can build something. You can build something you can be proud of. But we also live in a society where you're encouraged to be a fucking degenerate and go and burn someone's business down, and there's no repercussion, and take a TV out and say, fuck it, who cares? Anyone, I'm not paying for it. Who cares?
There's no brave men or women in politics anymore. Everybody's tap dancing around like the hard, tough topics.
Well, everybody looks for the adult in the room, right? That's always that's 101, right? Something happens on the mats. One of the guys starts wrestling like a lunatic, and you're like, "Hey, shut the fuck up, calm down." Everybody looks for the adult in the room.
But we're in a unique place, especially the three of us, because we all do jiu-jitsu, and the mats don't lie at all.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's justice in every round 4 times, and the real problem is I think we all evolved from like very small social groups. And everyone in the social group had to contribute. And the big problem is there's just too many people in the world that feel like they deserve shit that they didn't earn. I think it really gets reduced to that level. And that's the biggest flaw in the democratic idea, is that it's always someone else that's causing me to be this way, and there's no accountability. And one of the things I would do with just the rioters and the looters is, and again, this wouldn't work because it would be putting in more government and more rules, and that's not the way that we need to go. But you should have to show your 2018 tax returns and your voter registration. Like, hey, you want to get out here and loot and riot and do all this? Just show your tax return. You had a job last year. You contributed to society, and also you voted. But if you didn't do any of those things, you really haven't earned a right to be pissed about anything because you're not even exercising your right as an American to try to pursue happiness and freedom and liberty and vote. And, you haven't even done that. Like, to me, you belong at the kids' table. If it was Thanksgiving, you wouldn't be sitting here with the adults. You'd be with the kids.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, you're only guaranteed the pursuit of happiness, right? Making it happen is up to you.
Yeah, it's all about it's all about people getting back to work and getting back to focusing on what's important to them and what's important to them around them. You're always better when you put the blinders on and block everything out and not get bogged down by things you can't control, because you can't control a lot of things.
Well, isn't it in the pursuit of happiness where you actually find happiness, right? Like if you're not contributing to society and
It's
you're
the
not
climb.
adding value,
Yeah.
then you're just sitting. Like, here's an example. I know a lot of kids that are doing this right now. They just smoke and play Call of Duty all day long.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how can you feel fulfilled as a person if that's what you're doing? It's really hard to be feeling like you're contributing and pulling your own weight, right? We're all in a rowboat, and we all need to be rowing in the same direction.
Well, let's look at it like jiu-jitsu, right? Black belt is like the ultimate goal, right? Getting your black belt's not.
I'll be dead when that happens.
Getting your black belt's not is what's going to make you happy. It's the journey along the way, right? It's never the destination. I mean, that's anybody will tell you the same thing, right? It's the hours you spent getting better at jiu-jitsu, not so much.
And the weird thing about it is you're talking to a 5-year brown belt. I was a brown belt for 5 years, and I've seen guys get their black belts in 5 years, from start to black. And I always feel like maybe they don't appreciate it as much as the guy that took 15 years to get it, because I mean, multiple surgeries, just constantly grinding and paying the price over and over and over again. I think that when things come too easy, you don't appreciate them either.
Yeah, talent and hard work have to marry up at some point, and that's leads to the culmination of whatever degree of success you're trying to achieve. So you have to have both, right? So you can never get truly by on just talent alone. At some point, you'll hit a wall. You can never truly get by on just hard work. They have to marry up at some point to create that perfect storm. And you can remember times in your life where you've had that perfect storm, right? Maybe you hit a move, maybe you beat someone, maybe it was just a good week on the mats. I don't know. But, in sports, it's easy to calibrate, right? Like, you remember the times you just hit a baseball, like the ball would just fly off the bat for a period of time in your life where you're just like, I fucking got this. Like, this is like, I'm in the groove. And in football, you always understand, you're like, nobody can touch me, or whatever. I'm just getting through the line or whatever. Jiu-jitsu, anything. Those two have to marry up, and you have to have that perfect storm. Like I said, I don't want to get into belts because I have my issue with jiu-jitsu. That's my ringtone. I have my issue with jiu-jitsu because it's decided upon by a panel of fucking people in a bubble. I'm not going to go there.
But the whole point is, like, it's the grinding that's the fun part of it.
Right. No, that's absolutely correct. It's always the climb up and the climb down. People love to see the rise and the fall, always.
People see Brady on Sundays or in the Super Bowl, but they don't see all the work you put in the offseason during the week, everything else.
100%. And he watches film endlessly, you know what I mean? And he's a perfect example of someone who's at the absolute pinnacle, or at least was, at the absolute pinnacle of what he could do. And you see it in certain, certain sports, and it's a beautiful thing when you do. Jordan, that expose on Jordan, it was amazing for that, right? Like, you got to see just how driven, how focused, how dialed in he was, to the point where he was micromanaging everything in that organization, and he would literally go and practice and slap guys around. I mean, they talked about it openly because he was preparing them, and he made a really good analogy. And I know Jordan doctored it up because he ran it, right? But he made a really good point. He said, I was mentally preparing these guys to play the Celtics, the Lakers, the Pistons, because that's what was going to happen to them in a game. Do you think these guys are just going to hand you the crown? No, they're going to slap you in the face and say, no, take it. You're going to have to take it from them. And the best advice I ever got from a football coach was he said, if you want something in this life, you have to take it. It's not going to be handed to you. But we've entered into a culture in society where it's a hand it to me culture. And I think a lot of it started in the colleges. I think a lot of it's in the colleges, but it's also in the baby boomer generation. A lot of, at least I could say my parents, your parents, they wanted to give us what they didn't have, some of the parents, right? So they baby you. They massaged it along the way. No. Okay? Some of the best lessons I learned, and I'm sure you too and you, were in the barroom brawls, in the field playing sports growing up, getting your face pushed down in the dirt. I always say it all the time. All I can remember from high school is like I feel like I pushed a sled from Boston to fucking New Hampshire and back. Because that's all I remember was my face down in the mud pushing a sled. That's all I remember. People ask me what happened in high school. I pushed the sled. And my coach somewhere is probably laughing. But I'm serious. Like that's what I remember. And not enough people have had their face down in the mud. That's why I always use the term, is this a guy who's been in the huddle? Does he get it? Or does he not get it? And there's not enough of that. There's just not enough people that have had to overcome something. That's why I say all the time, I've had this argument with people that say, my kid's going to college. Is the best thing you could do for your kid is start a business for him, hand him the business, let him fail miserably, because they'll fail, and let them learn how to fail forward. Stop teaching them how to fail, and here, Jiu-Jitsu Pop, here's a free trophy. Here's a free prize. Because now the rest of their life, they feel like something's owed to them, as Coach is saying. They're owed something. They're supposed to be given something. And that's not how life... It doesn't... Let me tell you something. It doesn't work like that anywhere. People want communism? Go to Russia and wait in line for fucking bread. It's not communist anymore, but you know what I'm saying. Go wait for... The fundamental problem with communism is they underestimate the amount of time people want to wait in line for milk.
Yeah, I mean, you see this a lot in jiu-jitsu with blue belts, right? Every blue belt out there wants to get sponsored. Hey, what can you do for me? So, well, business asks, what can you do for me, right? I mean, you have a following, you actively promote what it is that we're trying to sell, but they just want something for free. Hey, I compete, you should give me a free rash guard, you should pay my travel fees, entry fees, whatever the case may be. And that's been a running joke for as long as I've done jiu-jitsu.
Oh yeah, that's it literally just comes down to, people have to feel like they're contributing to the cause, and they got to be working always. And getting handed things is going to create a kind of mentality in people that nobody wants to be around. And all these kids, they don't have the life experience. The ones that are running around talking about, we want socialist government and we want this, those kind of governments just perpetuate that depression from not contributing. You're not free to do, no one wants to live in North Korea. This shit's crazy. Like, everybody in here that wants like a communist country or a socialist, they should just go live there. Do it for 6 months and see how you like it.
That's the thing. They won't leave. That's why I said annex Seattle and give it to them and let them try it, but stop giving them cigarettes and Gatorade and just let them run with it and see where it goes. But it's a never-ending cycle right now until everybody has to relearn, retool their thinking. And that's going to be the hardest thing, is to retool people's thinking to start to understand how life is supposed to work. Like, no one's just going to hand you anything. Bruce was in here the other day, Quest Nutrition, Legendary Foods. Bruce said, he goes, for the first 9 months I worked for Quest, I got no money. We've had this talk, private, I got no money. They didn't pay me. He goes, now I was a chief executive officer there. I was a chief marketing officer there. He's like, he was a CCO. So, he goes, it takes time. You have to want, now granted, you can't work every day for free. You can't do everything for free. But you have to be willing to put the time in to learn the craft, to develop your craft. Just like you're saying, white to blue, blue to purple. Whatever it is in life, you have to be willing to, you have to fail sometimes. If everybody went out of the gate and started a business for themselves and was successful, Coach, everybody would be their own boss. It doesn't work that way.
It won't happen. When I first started my business, I was working for an oil major, making ridiculous money. My wife's an attorney. We didn't have any wants. I worked for 2 years on my gym before I made any money. And I see kids open up gyms right now, and they're ready to close after 3 months. And I'm like, you thought you were going to be profitable after 3 months? Are you crazy? Never once took a loan, really. did it all with just hard work. Started small and just worked my ass off, and then just kept building from there. You know, and the what is that? I'm gonna butcher this, but hard times create strong men. Strong
Iron
men,
sharpens
blah,
iron.
blah, blah, blah.
That's all you got to
No,
know.
I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about, right? You know, the better things get, the more softer the next cycle is going to be, until you start back at square one, and then you just got to do the cycle all over.
And iron sharpens iron. That's all there is to it. Sometimes you have to, like, there's not a person I've worked for that I've not said, we're going to fight, we're going to argue. It's the nature of the beast of even in my friendships. I mean, Coach has lived through this with me. I'm going to battle with you, but I'm still going to be your best friend. If you call me, I'm going to still pick you up at the airport.
Well, that's
But
the
I
thing. But let me stop you there. That's the thing, though. Like, you and I argue, and we have differences in opinion, but the one reason your opinion matters to me is because you're out here doing it. Like, that's the problem. A lot of people have voices, and they're not doing shit. And I think that just because you have a platform to push a narrative, it doesn't mean that you should listen to
No.
it. You know what I mean? But when people that are doing things and they're being productive, when they talk to me, I listen, whether I like it or not. And sometimes I may hate it, and I go home and reflect on it, and then I call you back and go, shit, you were right, man. You know? And I think that we need a lot more of that.
Yeah, it's a healthy dialogue. And I think too many people are scared to hurt someone's feelings. I'm going to hurt their feelings.
Well, the other thing is you got to have skin in the game.
Yes. Good point.
And anything, right? You know, right now, you see in law enforcement, everybody's got an opinion on how law enforcement can reform and do better, but very few of those people actually understand what the job entails. They don't have any skin in the game. Right? They have no experience in the industry. So, you know, the good idea fairy is undefeated in government work. Everybody's got this great idea, and then it sounds great. Oh, God, we need to do that. But if you listen to somebody who's got skin in the game, they'll tell you why that can be a terrible idea.
Listen, I am pro law enforcement, and I don't envy you guys at all because it's a job that I wouldn't be able
Thankless.
I would not be able to do it. But here's the thing: what are the two most dangerous parts of the job? Responding to domestic violence calls, right? That's probably really dangerous. And maybe traffic stops. I don't know, but those just seem like they would be like the most dangerous. You're walking to a house.
Most unpredictable for
yeah,
sure.
you can't see what's going on there.
Yeah.
And then you're walking up to a car and you don't know the situation. Everything's covered. Those are very dangerous situations. And up in Seattle, they're talking about domestic violence calls. That's where they don't want law enforcement going. That shit's crazy to me. That's bananas. I have nothing but daughters, and if something bad happened to one of them as adults, I want law enforcement showing up. It's just these people are short-sighted to the point that people are going to get hurt. A lot of people are going to get hurt. And it's, you know, I think that's what's going to have to happen.
I think what's interesting in seeing this experiment and all the onus falling on the governors is, I just keep saying it, and I've said it 50 times in my house, is power corrupts absolutely, and absolute power corrupts. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yes. You know, that's why we always have checks and balances built into the government and everything. I mean, and you definitely need somebody to call you on your shit, no matter what profession you're in. You know, it goes back to having a good circle. Because when you have people or yes men around you, you're never going to get anything done right.
Ooh, I got a great question for you. What do you think about living in the zip code that you're policing? Do you think that would help?
I think yes and no. Realistically, it's very hard to do it, right? The majority.
How about counties?
Well, so here's the thing. I work for a county police department, and a lot of our guys, if not most of our guys, can't really afford to live here, right? So to be able to do that, you got to be able to pay the guys and the women, because there's a lot of women in law enforcement. Thank you to you guys. Or,
Gals.
Thank you to you gals. But we'd have to make enough money to actually afford that home in there. You know, a lot of us have families and stuff, and we got to be able to afford to do that. I do think it helps, but how realistic is that? Depends on how much.
Well, typically it's the inverse where everybody's saying the problem is, right? So it's like poor communities are not being represented by cops in that community, right? So it's, I mean, the typical narrative is you police South Central Los Angeles and you live in Simi Valley, California,
right.
Suburb, right? So you're not subject to shopping with the people that you're policing.
Yeah, and that's why you've seen a lot of community policing initiatives go out, and it's has great dividends. When you're actually going out there in the community, you're not just only doing traffic stops or only seeing people when they're at their worst and they need your help and calling 911. You're out there building relationships with the public.
That's why, a hybrid to that is I'm always a fan of reserve and part-time programs that are based in those communities, because it's harder. What he's getting at is, I know what you're getting at. It's harder to live in the community when you just can't afford it, right? Like a lot of cops in Westchester probably can't afford to live in Westchester, right?
The inverse is, but
So,
that's not what's being called out.
Right, but you can create a program that can service that. Like, I think, like, whether you have a fair or you have events, it's nice to see familiar faces and create a community environment. And you can do that through other programs, so it can be done. It's just, it takes the right people, it takes the right community, and it takes the right initiative. It's a hard one, because it's the same thing with, like, teachers. Historically, teachers don't like to live in the district or the town where they teach, right? Because, like, if you teach at, say, East Boston High, where I grew up, a lot of the teachers like to live in, like, Winthrop or one town over. So, like you said, like, you don't have to bump into the kid you gave a D to or whatever. Like, you don't want to deal with the parent squawking every 5 minutes. So you always, the rule is always live a town over or live a town away. Don't necessarily live in the same town.
Well, I think because I have such a vast student base, I think one of the big problems is when we're coming from the suburbs to police the inner city, right? We're driving in and we're meeting in a room and we're coalescing as a unit, and then we get released on the streets with an agenda. I think that's a lot different strategy than is if you, like, lock your door and you walk into the precinct and then you dress out and you go and you're actually policing the people that you're shopping with all the time. I think that's what a lot of these people are calling for.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wondering, even maybe being out of your squad car for 30% of your shift and actually be walking.
I love walking beats. I'm a big fan of walking beats. I don't know where you are, but I like walking beats.
I don't know the answers. I mean, this is way above my pay grade, but
you don't
that's
see
definitely something that communities ask for, and that's why you see departments try and create these community initiatives where they have officers that go out into the community, they attend events. Your police athletic leagues where you have kids. You got police officers coaching kids in football, martial arts, baseball, stuff like that, trying to build something within the community, get to know each other better, so it's not as adversarial as what oftentimes is in police work. I know Atlanta Police Department, at least a while back, I don't know if it's still going on, I think it is, but they'll give you, like, certain credits to buy a house in the city, in these certain areas, so that way you have cops living in some of these areas that feel like they're underserved or like it's adversarial with the
I
department.
played police athletic league basketball.
You're like 5'7".
Listen, it wasn't a great career, but listen, I tried. It was
a short.
Yeah,
career.
hoops wasn't my thing, and I'm not 5'7". That's rude. But I did have a hoops career, for the record. It was like 1 minute. But I think I'm a big fan of walking beats and community beats. I just think you have to find the medium. Every town, every district, every area is going to be a little bit different. And I think having those people in the community, and there's ways of doing that. We were talking about that in the car on the way over. There's ways of doing that. There's ways of bringing that together, and I think that there's something there to that. But I also think the cops are gassed, right? So on the flip side, you can't take all the gas. We know this from jiu-jitsu. You can't take all the energy bar, all the bandwidth out of them by having them work triple shifts and this and that and everything. And then, like, it's hard for them to want to run a PAL league or want to run or do something. You know what I mean? You have to have more time to train, more time to do these things. That's why I'm a big fan. I know some departments aren't, and I'll let you, kind of answer this. I know some departments aren't fans of this, but that's why I'm a big fan of reserve programs. I'm a big fan of having programs in place that allow for community-type guys to come in and say, yeah, I can help take the relief of that, or I can do that. Not everybody wants to be a door kicker. Not everybody wants to be, a guy, the first one in, serving the warrants or whatever. There are people out there that are willing to do those things. I grew up and I always had law enforcement guys or community guys that were my coaches. They were involved in the community. I think that stuff is really important, but you guys don't have enough time to train as it is to get the bandwidth to be able to go do those things. And I think it's hard as you have families and everything else. That's why you always need a fresh crop of young guys. It can't always be this guy's going to be a badass door kicker, or this guy's going to be this. You need some guys that, like, hey, he'll be a good community guy. And I know what you mean. Like, you need some guys that are willing to come in and work the fair and do the work you don't want to do, because you can always chase the paycheck, and if you're chasing the money, it's a zero-sum game. You're going to chase it till you're dead. You're always going to be chasing the dollar, but you have to have some people in place that are just good community people. One of the towns, I think it was, I forget where it was, they were talking about at the homes for domestic abuse, they were talking about bringing in experts, right? Like experts would show up, kind of like the Ghostbusters, right? I think there's something that won't work, but I think there's something to the concept of having, like, on staff, you know what I mean? Someone that someone can sit with. Hey, what happened? What's going on? Get in, not have it be just a you go in the hole and you go, you know what I mean? But that's a mental health thing. That's an adjustment at a different level, and I know you know what I mean. That's a tweak at a different level, and I think you'd agree that should be in place, right? Because how many times did you put pull a guy out of a house or a gal out of a house, and you're like, this could have went either way. Like, I mean, they're just having an argument, but one's got to go, and that's common in domestics.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing a lot now, especially with mental health. In Georgia, there's the Georgia Crisis Line. So if there's somebody who's suffering a crisis, that's not something police officers are really equipped to deal with. And even more training wouldn't help that, given all the other duties we have. So we can call the Georgia Crisis Line, who will send out a worker to help us out and figure out what's best, because jail's not the answer for everybody. Right?
Not all the time.
Sometimes they need help.
Yeah.
And so, we can call them out there and then help give them the help that they need. And then, long term as well, try and get them into a program that
work through the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, so there are situations where I can see that type of community activity making sense, but it has to be a very focused approach, and it's a tweak at a different level. I think that, like you said, it's not understanding the job completely, because some of these you show up and the gal or the guy has a knife to the other person's balls or neck or something, and you know what I mean? It's a physical thing. I mean, that has to be dealt with. So,
well, let's set this question up. I'll throw this at you guys.
Fire.
I think we can all agree that something should be done with Chaz, right? whatever it is.
Is that what it's still called?
It's just that, I think they changed it.
I know they changed. Don't they have a flag now,
Capitol
too?
Hill Free Zone is what they call it.
Because they don't like the term Chaz since it was the autonomous zone?
Yeah, I think so.
It's like Escape from New York.
So here's the thing. We identify that there's a problem, right? If there is actually a policing problem, or if there's just a community response problem. You're the king, and you have to make one decision to get the ball rolling. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to.
No, anything goes. I'm
king.
So I'm the king of that community, but I'm addressing
you're the king of the nation.
Okay.
And you either think there's a problem with law enforcement, or there's a problem with society's response to the law enforcement, right? So, but you get to make one mandate, or you have to make the first mandate to start the change. What would it be?
I'd be first worried about my economy, but that's another.
Well, what would put us on the right track?
Okay.
What would be the first power move you made?
So if I'm building a strong government, the first thing I'm going to have is a strong police force. So you're going to want to outlaw 2 or 3 things right away: stealing, murder, capital crimes. Right. So you're going to outlaw capital crimes right away. That's me. Right. How do you fix it? Right. How do you fix it? I think you have to roll back some of the micromanaging of every situation, like he said. There has to be situations and things where it's not always about, the answer can't always be somebody got to go, right? So I'll pick on the Minnesota incident, for example. This all started over a guy passing a $20 counterfeit bill.
Agreed.
$20 counterfeit bill. Okay? So I think the one thing I would fix is perspective. So how do you teach perspective, right? So I think, if I'm passing a counterfeit $20 bill in your gym, I'm going to put it back on you. You know what you're going to do? You're going to pull me aside and say, John, what's going on? What's the problem? Oh, it was $20? Here. Perspective.
I got a great story that actually happened to me. A big retailer, big box retailer. I was a manager. I was in my early 20s, 25 maybe. And I was aggressive, just a maniac. And someone stole something. man did, right? He put his rolls in. They came back, they got developed, and he took the developed film and he put it in his inside pocket of the jacket. It was $3.77. 2 years prior, he had stole something from Target and actually got in a physical altercation with the loss prevention officer. So anyway, I've been working like 11 to 2 in the afternoon. I was a merchant, and I was on my way out, and the loss prevention officer was like, Casey, I need help. I got to make a stop. This guy stole something. I didn't even hear what he stole at the time, right? And I'm like, all right, I got your back. Because LP has to have a manager witnessing the whole thing.
Right.
And it was a female loss prevention officer, and she walked up to the guy, and she was like, hey, sir, I need you to come back inside. I got to talk about what you stole in your jacket. And he, like, pushed her out of the way. And, of course, me, the way that I am, I, like, walked up, and I put my hands on his hips, and I was like, let's go inside. And he tried to hit me, and I just double-legged him and dumped him on his head. Right? Now he's bleeding all over the place. She throws cuffs on him. We take him to the office. They ended up giving that guy, like, a couple years in prison because it was his second time. And when the regional manager where I used to work found out, we had a conference call. He wasn't in the room, and he literally asked me if I took a stupid pill. And he was like, you understand what you did over $3.77? Like, you should have let the guy walk. You should have, like, not even engaged him for something so minor. And it turned out that the reason he didn't pay was because all the film was overexposed. So, like, you look at the film and none of the pictures even work. So he's like, these aren't good. And he just threw them in and took off. And it was just such a bad, and it goes to what you're saying, like
perspective.
A $20 bill, I'm going to just count that as like, I can't trust this guy, and I'm just going to kick him out.
Yeah. So, I guess if you're asking me, right, what's the fix? And this is a hard one. It's how do you give perspective, right, to everybody, not just cops, everybody, perspective.
A lot of that comes with age. I was a lot different cop at 21 than I am now at 36, and going back to perspective, I can't tell you how many times somebody is shocked with basic necessities. I'm talking about, like,
diapers,
white bread, and bologna because they need to survive. And rather than taking them to jail, I just pay their bill.
Yeah.
Right? But then you got somebody that goes in there and, they're stealing steaks. I mean, I'm talking seriously. We caught them stealing at a Blockbuster, and I'm patting them down. And I find steaks and ribs taped to the inside of their sweatpants.
This is awesome.
You don't get a pass. You don't need steaks and ribs to survive, right?
Yeah.
But that's part of the perspective, right? So one person is stealing stuff they need to survive. They don't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. The other person just wants to throw a party.
And they just don't know where to go to get it. And there are programs and things that will help them, but they don't know where to go. And that speaks to, like, humility and everything else. Because the first breakdown in a society is going to be, how do I provide food, clothing, shelter to myself? That's what everybody wakes up and goes to bed taking for granted. Food, clothing, and shelter.
Well, here's a good thing for perspective. Let's say I do a California stop and I roll through a stop sign. And you come up to me, you pull me over, and you come up to the car, and I hand you my CCW license and my license, and there was no one around. It's like 10 o'clock at night. There's no one. And I just slowed down, and then I just went. I know a Metro officer here in town who says, like, if you hand him a CCW license, a lot of times he just cuts you loose. He's like, thanks, man. Peace. If it's nothing that's going to really hurt anybody, it's just better to not engage that sometimes than to engage it over. I mean, I don't know. I could be wrong. I'm not law enforcement. But it would seem like the last thing you'd want to do is, like, really start getting into it with someone that you know.
Well, there's, and he'll agree with this. And Tony and I have talked about this. There's a lot of badge-heavy guys out there. They exist. There's a lot of guys that are badge-heavy. There's countless videos on YouTube. There's a lot of that. It's a power thing. There are guys who, they're off duty, and somebody flips them off, and they don't have the ability to be like, fuck it, like, forget it. They have to, like, whip out their badge. They're 9 districts away from where they live, and they instantly become RoboCop. And that happens. There's badge-heavy guys. I mean, am I lying saying that? I mean, Tony says the guys that are, yeah. And the problem is, it's having and there's stresses that person might be going through, and all these different things, and we all get that. But when I'm trying to fix a utopian society or create a utopian society, the first thing, if I could instill into the group of people that I was leading, would be perspective. Because perspective is going to lead them to be nicer, to be kinder, to be gentler people, to understand what someone is trying to achieve in life. And people don't spend enough time shutting up and listening.
But where does that start, though? Like, how do you? I think you either have it or you don't.
It's how you're raised.
Yeah, that's how you're raised. So there would be a generational
Yeah.
lag, right?
So it comes back to like the easiest term in the book's bullying, right? Why do people bully other kids? Why at a fundamental age, why do you feel you can bully someone?
Because they're not accomplished. Or
You just think they're inferior, right? You could bully them. You can push them around. Okay? You should never do that. Okay? And that's an easy thing to say. But you should never do it, and that only happens because you lack perspective. You know what I mean? I grew up poor, but I didn't know I was poor, right? My family always made sure there was food there were sneakers, there were shoes on your back. You know, we didn't have everything. You know, we went on one vacation a year, and that was a big deal. I grew up how I grew up. But I always had perspective. You know what I mean? I had friends that went to jail. Just like you guys, I had friends that drug overdosed. So the way I grew up, very middle class, you had perspective, right? You knew you were always, tell me I'm lying, you knew you were always one step away. You could have been a cop or you could have been a criminal. Like you were one step away from whatever it could be. And I know that's a hard thing to come to the realization of saying, but the reality is you always have perspective. I had one simple rule when I went to college. Don't get anybody pregnant, don't do drugs. You know what I mean? Perspective. It's a simple rules and simple understanding of the universe. Elon Musk said it. What do you say? I think everybody should just be nicer. I think if you just have perspective, like, hey, maybe that's a kid who's having a tough time at home. Maybe he's underprivileged. Maybe he doesn't have everything. Do you really need to go and push him down into the ground just to say, like, I'm better than you or I have X? And that's the problem. The problem is with social media, with everything else, with Facebook, and with people swiping up and all the bullshit that we're into and everything else that we proliferate every day when we're on these social media channels, it's perspective. You had a conversation with me about pictures the other day. Perspective. It's all how you're viewed and how you view yourself and how you want to be viewed and portrayed. It's about creating that perspective, and that's a very hard thing to do. You have to sit and have something that's very rare today, a dinner time conversation with your kids of like, hey, you know, how's Susie at school? Pick anybody. Oh, they're okay. You know that person, you know, just keep in mind this, like maybe they need a friend. Maybe this, just be nicer to everybody. Just have perspective. It's hard to teach. There's not a magic wand. There's not a law I can make. You didn't say what law, but there's no, you know, if I could instill one thing in society today, if I could wave a magic wand and I was a genie rubbing a lamp, I would love to give everybody perspective.
Well, and I think you can teach that as an adult, right? You know, if you have a mentor, right, Casey, how many young guys come into the gym and you take them under your wing and you help guide them down a better path, right? It happens a lot in law enforcement too. I'm a field training officer, so I get these people just graduating the academy. A lot of times they're kids.
Oh, they want to light the world on fire. They're all fired up.
Right. So for me, it's not just telling them what to do, what not to do. I have to explain why you should do this, why you should do that. You know, they could either take it or leave it, but I try my best, especially with the younger guys on my shift, try and help them out and try and guide them into being better police officers. You know, I can't go kick down doors, you know, talking about door kickers like I could when I was younger, but I can tell you when and where to make some of the better decisions and things like that. Like, hey, this isn't worth it, you know, in certain situations. So you can do that as an adult, but it takes having leaders and it takes having mentors to help guide those other younger adults into getting that perspective.
There's not enough emphasis on the mentor relationship. 100%.
You know, and if you're older, have a good circle. You know, I keep my circle pretty small. There's a lot of people I'm acquainted with, not many people that I'm close to, but I try and keep the right people around me in my circle so they're not afraid to tell me, hey man, you're fucking up. You need to stop this.
We talked about this. You and I have talked about this at length for hours. If I could have that time back, you know, we've talked about this, but you know, it's about perspective. Like you view some people from a different lens. Like, hey, you know, maybe they're going through this or they're going through that, and sometimes things affect them. We've all been through that. I mean, it's a hard thing. You know, I guess my answer is simple. Maybe it's too simple, but perspective would be something that I would love to see so many people have. And like you brought up, a mentor-student relationship. You know, having that strong bond. Not every. See, where we live in an era now, guys. And I know we're going long, but it's important to say this. We live in an era now of like doxing and everybody has, you know what I mean? Everybody's trying to have an I gotcha. And you go through it every day you put the uniform on. You have to be like, in the car, like, you know what I mean? You know exactly what I'm saying. And the problem is we got to stop saying I gotcha. You know, and it goes both ways. It goes officer to perp to officer. It has, just cool out here for a second. What are you trying to do? Okay, I was trying to knife and kill that guy. Okay, that's not okay. We're going to deal with that. I was trying to buy diapers for my kid. All right, let's fix it. You know, perspective.
One of the things, too, that I think we can all get better at is trying to teach lessons to people in the heat of the moment. That shit never works.
Never works.
You know, so like this is kind of how I manage my kids and my students and fighters and this and that. So like one of the things that I think we do as adults and we can do much, much better is preventative coaching, right? So, for example, I'll just use my kids because it's easier. It's not going to offend anybody. I'm going to teach my children that it's wrong to steal a bicycle long before they come home with a law enforcement officer and a stolen bicycle. Okay, caught your daughter riding a bike that didn't belong to her.
Preventative medicine.
Preventative maintenance, right? So now that my kids are going off to college, I've been talking to them about roofies and about staying above reproach and adding, making sure that they remain valuable, you know. And I know my kids, they roll their eyes and they're like, again? We're going over this again. And it's like, yeah, every human being has a perceived value. And that's based on the way that you walk and the way that you talk. And do you look like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo when you're walking across the street, you got your shoulders slumped and your head's down and you don't have your shit together? Like, that's a real problem. Like, when you're going from point A to point B, you need to move your ass. Like, walk with a purpose, have your head up, engage people when you see them. And it all starts with getting up in the morning and exercising our rights as Americans. You can go straight to your faucet and you can get clean water. How many people can do that in the world? Not many.
It's like half,
yeah.
Right?
And then you're also literate. So then the next thing, after you drink 2 glasses of water in the morning, then you should pick up a book and you should read for 30 minutes because you're exercising the privilege to being educated and literate. And then you've already eliminated so much of the world's competition, you know, and I'm having these talks with my kids every single day, and I think, well, I mean, I don't think this, I know this, I have friends that have pretty good kids, and they just don't address topics. You know, it's like, oh, my kid's doing good, getting good grades in school, doing this, doing that, and they're just not coaching. And for me, I'm here on this planet to be a steward for my children. Like, that's my job. My job, I was entrusted these awesome humans, and I don't take it lightly, and I never stop coaching them, and they hate that shit. They really do. They're just like, oh, again, every time I get in the car with
They'll thank you later.
Yeah. But I believe, you know, Abigail, I believe she's as solid as they come. She's as solid as a rock, man. And it's because it's just just constantly and in a loving way, you know what I mean? And
I love that you say to her, like, you're my masterpiece. You know what I mean?
Best thing I ever did.
You know? And that tells me a lot about your approach to her. You know, what she means to you, how you've cultivated her thought process and got her to understand the universe.
She's good, but I think for providing perspective, I think that's a lot. Like, parents need to just go, hey, it's not status quo. Like, I get offended if she gets anything less than an A. Like, if she gets anything less than an A, I'm offended. I'm like, I know you better than that.
Well, you're an overachiever because I was a straight C student, motherfucker. but
I dropped out of high school freshman year.
It's you always want the generation after you to achieve more than you achieved. And I think that if they have the right tools, the right mentorship, the right guidance, great things will come. And they have to. What's lost today is the art of the conversation, what we're doing right now.
Yeah, so if yours is perspective, in case yours is preventative coaching,
what's yours?
Mine would be effective communication. And what you see through Facebook, all this social media, is we have an entire generation of people that do not know how to effectively communicate with each other. They think, he or she who yells the loudest wins, and it doesn't work like that. You're seeing that right now in the news, right? You got one side that's trying to talk over the other side, and they just pick a side, doesn't matter because it happens both ways. And people aren't trying to engage and understand the other person and provide their perspective or coach them up the other way and just really try to communicate and find some middle ground and find a way to work the problem.
Maybe we can rub a genie one day and get our 3 wishes.
That'd be rad, huh? So it sounds
We're all bullshitting. We'd wish for like $1 million and fuck everybody.
It sounds like perspective, empathy, communication. And, I mean, those are pretty core
values.
Core values, and most people kind of understand that. And where this all starts to break down is when people don't feel valuable. And it's really hard to feel valuable when you're getting shit for free and you're not contributing.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like we just need to go here's one thing. Tell me if I'm out of line. You would know better than me because I've never been in law enforcement. As a matter of fact, growing up, I was always on the other side. But why hasn't the president just gone over there? Like, if I was the president of the United States, I would have been in Seattle already.
He's a classic Republican archetype.
Yeah,
No. I wouldn't go there and make like a mandate or a change, but I would walk down the street, and they would see me coming for 100 yards, and I'd walk alone down the street, and I'd be like, what do you guys want? What are you doing? Let's sit down. You guys can't be staying here.
I think the governor, I think that's a great point. I think the governor should. I think the governor should. In my opinion, I'll be the resident poli-sci guy on this. I think the governor. So if you're a classic Republican archetype, you allow all things are handled locally, right? So I think the mayor or the governor should go and do something like that and say, what do you guys want? The problem is like you said this earlier, it's having somebody with a spine, right? Somebody with a spine to step up and say, let me go see. But they don't want the answer to that, right? Because especially in that state.
Well, right now, there's 90% of the people down there in the Capitol Hill free zone, they don't even know what they're
Exactly, that's what I'm getting at.
But that's why you got to work through it, and you got to start the dialogue. I mean, here's what's going to happen. If they don't do anything, they're going to go in there and crack skulls and just clean it up eventually.
No, I think eventually it's just going to collapse on its own.
You think?
Oh, yeah.
They're going to get tired of living in fecal matter.
Well, because it comes down to communism, right? So like they create a sociological experiment, right? And the experiment right now is based on the Gatorade and cigarettes showing up. When the Gatorade and cigarettes stop showing up, and then it also comes down to who decides and distributes that Gatorade and cigarettes. What's going to happen is classic capitalism, you guys. The guy at the bottom that's not getting the Gatorade and cigarettes is going to say, fuck you, I'll go out and earn my own.
They need a trade embargo, right?
That's
just, hey, you created borders? Well, guess what? We're not trading with you. So as soon as you guys run out, it'll be like...
Well, they have nothing to trade in there.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. It'll end up being like a germ. It'll just
the problem with communism is eventually you run out of other people's shit.
Yeah. You don't want to wait in line for bread. Trust me. You don't want to wait in line for bread. That's people ask me all the time. They're like, explain communism to me. I'm going. Communism is how long you're willing to wait in line for food,
or medicine, or anything.
I haven't heard the Canadian system's crazy. Like trying to get some like healthcare. They have healthcare you can pay for, and then they have like state provided healthcare. And I heard you got if you get a knee injury, I heard you're looking at like 6 months before you can get.
I heard it was longer than that, but yeah, I mean, you're out of commission for a while because it's not a life-saving procedure. It's a quality of life thing. So if you're a pro athlete I'm sure if you're a pro athlete, you're going to have the right insurance. But let's say you're a high school athlete, and you're trying
Jiu-Jitsu athlete.
Yeah.
Perspective. Well, listen, let's wrap up. We've had fun. Say something.
Train life your life depends on it because one day it will.
Listen, leave a review. We're out.
Oh, dude, I hate Tom.